So many of you out there, you make me do this. You make me do this. You make me get on the air and have to defend Trump. I really, you think I want to do it. I'm not like the biggest fan of Trump ever. There's a lot of things I can criticize Trump for, and I have in the past, and if you've been a regular listener, you know. But I look at things, and I see what people post on social media, and I read articles from places like the New York Times and other places, and I see other things, and I read tweets from so-called journalist Chuck Todd. Ooh, I said so-called. Oh, no. Oh, no. When you can't say those words anymore, that's bad. And then I have to get on here and defend Trump, and I don't necessarily want to do it. But you make me, because I'm the voice of reason, and I have to be the voice of reason even when it comes to Trump stuff. This is Beyond Reason Radio, where I am your voice of reason, your host, Michael Yaffee, in a world that is beyond reason. And one thing that is not beyond reason is Tom Benson is once again producing here on a Friday. How are you, Tom?
We are fine, and here it is, as you said, a Friday. And the great thing about Trump is you never run out of material.
Oh, my, yes. This is very true.
Every day, every hour, there's something going on.
This is very true. And you know what's really funny? This is kind of a side note. But you wonder why Trump criticizes the media so much? Because he watches it. You know he's watching it. He even says he watches it. So he's one of the presidents that actually watches all of it all the time. And you know it, especially Fox News. But, okay, this is what I'm going to address a lot in today's show. And I'm actually very sick of this topic. And sick of hearing about it, sick of talking about it. Every talk show host, that's all they do is they talk about this topic. But it's the big thing with the president. It's the big thing out there in all the media circles. It's the big thing out there in social media. And that is this idea of media bias, of the press, of fake news. Okay? So I'm going to, I don't like harping on the whole media bias thing because basically there's 10 other talk show hosts on right now probably that will talk about media bias. I mean, it's all I hear on conservative radio anymore is they talk about how the media is biased. We complain about the media constantly, and it's just kind of annoying because I guess it's a millennial in me. I don't care. I don't watch all these cable news channels all the time, so I don't really care as much. But I want to address this issue today, and we're going to get deep into it, and then we're going to move on with our lives. Okay? We're going to get deep into this. We're going to address why this is such a big issue, why the fake news thing is out there, why Trump supporters do not like the media, conservatives don't like the quote-unquote mainstream media, why Trump is bashing them, and why the quote-unquote mainstream media is out there constantly talking about this, constantly addressing it, why Trump said it in his press conference. We're gonna get deep into this because I see the real problem here. I see the real divide here, and it's something that leftists don't understand. It's something that regular people I see on social media don't understand. They're not really thinking about it. And frankly, it's something that I don't think Trump understands fully and something that the mainstream media doesn't understand. And frankly, I don't think it's some Fox News, talk radio necessarily understands. But of course I understand because I'm your voice of reason. So there you go. So I'm going to explain what the issue is. And then, like I said, we're going to move on with our lives and get on to more topics. I like getting into deeper topics in a lot of different areas. So if you have a take on anything we're going to talk about, it's 407-916-5400 and text to 23680. We are also on Facebook Live. You can send me a friend request on Facebook. We're friends anyway, so send me a friend request. Search Michael Yaffee, send me a friend request, and I will accept it. So Trump, we talked about it on yesterday's show. Trump had this press conference, and of course I go on social media today, and it's split down the middle. I have some people who loved every minute of it, and then some people who said, he's a maniac. This is what I hear. This is what I've been hearing all day. He's a maniac. How could you like it? He's a maniac. He's a liar. He's crazy. What did I just watch? Just craziness. And I'm like, okay, you're both missing it, but that's all right. That's why you have me. So, but I want to address first how certain outlets in the media are reacting to what Trump did. And I have some cuts here. We'll go over exactly how they're reacting, and I'm going to tell them what they don't understand. You know, a lot of the show lately, as I said yesterday, is like I'm giving the left a gift here. So I'm giving the media a gift as well. Because I think this is the one show where actually a lot of people on the other side actually can bear listening to me. So I want you to listen to me because I'm going to educate you today. So let's go over how some people in the media reacted to Trump's press conference. First, a cut here from CBS Evening News anchor Scott Pelley. This is what he said about it.
Today, we learned the length of the president's fuse, 28 days. After 4 weeks of being blocked by courts, challenged by Congress, and held to account by the public, President Trump called a hasty news conference and went on offense with the familiar tools that built his career: bluster, bravado, exaggeration, and a few loose facts.
Oh, yes. All of a sudden now Scott Pelley cares about loose facts. This is what I'm going to get into what they don't understand and why Trump's firing back and why people like it. But let's go into the next cut here. Shepard Smith on Fox News. People say, oh, someone on Fox News criticized him. Shepard Smith is a known liberal Democrat. He has been for years. He's not a conservative on Fox News, never has been. But here's what Shepard Smith said about the press conference.
From CNN, an accomplished reporter, a guy I've never met, but a good reporter. I mean, treating him like he's, I'm not even going to use the word, I'm not going to give Twitter it's the love it needs. It's crazy what we're watching every day. Yeah. It's absolutely crazy. He keeps repeating ridiculous throwaway lines that are not true at all and sort of avoiding this issue of Russia as if we're some kind of fools for asking the question. Really? Your opposition was hacked and the Russians were responsible for it, and your people were on the phone with Russia on the same day it was happening, and we're fools for asking the questions? No, sir. We are not fools for asking this question, and we demand to know the answer to this question. You owe this to the American people. Your supporters will support you either way. If your people were on the phone with her, what were they saying? We have a right to know. We absolutely do, and that you call us fake news and put us down like children for asking these questions on behalf of the American people is inconsequential. The people deserve that answer, at very least.
I can't help but laugh because they're just so angry. They just don't get it. They're upset because he's calling them fake news. That's why they're upset. That's why they're upset. That's the only reason he's calling them out, and they don't like it. That's what it is. You think he cares about, we're the voice of the American people. We deserve to know. Oh, shut up. You don't care. Okay, let's go next to Jake Tapper. Jake Tapper was asked about this in the press conference, and this is what he had to say.
And he's from CNN.
Oh, yeah, CNN. I'm sorry. I assume my audience usually knows, but maybe not. So
look, everybody at home just needs to ask themselves, how would you react if that were your boss coming in and giving a speech to the employees where you work? How would you react if that was somebody in your family that you were trying to have a conversation with? You would think, this is very difficult to assess in a positive way. The person is not dealing with the world in which we live. He said things that weren't true. He was called out by one reporter. You said you had the biggest electoral victory since Reagan. That's not true. And he said, well, somebody gave me that information. Somebody gave me that information. The buck stops there? Is that where we are with this presidency? You said it. Own the words. You were wrong. But it's not just about electoral votes. It's about the fact that he's still fixated on whether or not he legitimately won the presidency. President Trump, if you're watching, you're the president. You legitimately won the presidency. Now get to work and stop whining about it.
Okay, so many things to address there. You know, to be honest, I want to be on your side, Jake Tapper. I want to be on your side, Scott Pelley. I want to be on your side, Shepard Smith. I want to call out the president when he does something wrong. But here is the crux of the matter. Here is the issue. This is why people are upset at you, and this is why you're called fake news. The double standard, the bias. That is why. It's not necessarily that you're wrong about everything Trump says. You're wrong about a lot of it. And he, first, before I get to that, first he talked about, what if this was your boss? And, so he was talking to employees. He's talking to the American people. He's the boss of the American people. That's why he was there. He's trying to go around you and talk to the American people. But the whole reason why Trump's upset, why Trump supporters are upset, why a lot of the American people doesn't trust the media isn't so much that you're criticizing Trump. It's because of the double standard. It's because I do not remember all this outrage by these same people when Obama did the same thing. That's why We're upset because we see the hypocrisy. We see the double standard. We don't remember you constantly harping on Obama when he lied to the American people. And they talk, I heard people say today, oh, well, President Trump's press conference wasn't presidential. Obama did such a better job. He was so good at answering questions. Did you ever even watch an Obama press conference? I couldn't stand them because he would take 5 minutes to answer one question and he would bumble around with a bunch of and then we still didn't really get a real answer to the question, and then the press conference was over. Trump at least answered a ton of questions, addressed a ton of issues, and was there for like an hour and a half. I guarantee if Obama was there for an hour and a half, we had, 3 questions, and he would have a bunch of stuttering and bumbling. This is what I'm talking about. It's the hypocrisy. It's the double standard. And you know what? I wouldn't necessarily mind the double standard and the hypocrisy, but the reason why people have a problem with it from people like you, Scott Pelley, or Shepard Smith, or Jake Tapper, is because you don't admit your bias. People, I often talk about this stuff, and they say, well, you said the same thing to Obama. Talk radio did the same thing to Obama. Well, but, me on talk radio, and most talk radio hosts, they admit their bias. They admit they're conservative. They admit that they don't like a Democrat president. They at least are upfront and admit their bias ahead of time. Jake Tapper, Chuck Todd, all you people, just admit you're liberal Democrats. Just do it. Just admit your bias against Trump, and then we can move on. Then maybe we'll take you a little more seriously. If Rachel Maddow criticizes President Trump, it's not the end of the world because we know she's a liberal Democrat, and we expect it. And we might actually take her more seriously and say, well, let me listen to someone from the other side because we know she's from the other side. But people like Jake Tapper and Scott Pelley and Shepard Smith and Chuck Todd and Wolf Blitzer and all these people, you're liberal Democrats. Just admit it. Just admit it. It's the whole facade that we are objective journalists and we don't have any biases and we're just as hard on Republicans and Democrats alike. No, you're not. No, you're not. How do I know this? Because you complain that Trump calls you fake news, right? You complain that Trump calls you fake news all the time. Well, how could he say such a thing? It's not fake news. But I didn't hear any of these complaints when Obama constantly called Fox News basically fake news. Here's a montage of Obama doing just that.
You talked to somebody who said, well, I don't know, I was watching Fox News and they said this horrible. Good, affordable health care might seem like a fanged threat to the freedom of the American people on Fox News.
Fox News, on a regular basis, it is a constant menu. They will find, folks who make me mad.
Look, if I watched Fox News, I wouldn't vote for me.
Look, if I watched Fox News, I wouldn't vote for me either. Right? Because, you've got this screen, this funhouse mirror through which people are receiving information.
He just called Fox News a funhouse mirror. Okay? He criticized Fox News. That's just some of it. He basically called Fox News fake news for 8 years. And I don't remember Chuck Todd saying, well, this is not good for the health of the republic, and we have to understand that this is not good for the president. No, they didn't care. Why? Because they're liberal Democrats. Chuck Todd, just admit you're a liberal Democrat. Wolf Blitzer, just admit you're a liberal Democrat, and then we can move on with our lives. Scott Pelley, just admit you're a liberal Democrat, and we can move on with our lives. Maybe then we'll actually listen to you and say, well, you're from the other side, and you have a different point of view. But it's the facade that you're objective journalists. It's the double standard that people are tired of. Because they might agree with you that Trump does crazy things. I agree with you. When Trump gets up there and talks about it being the biggest electoral college victory since Reagan, obviously that's a lie. Obviously it's absurd. But so he says something like that, and he was called out on, and he says, well, somebody else gave me that information. And now the whole media calls him a liar because of that one thing. Every media outlet I've heard today that criticized Trump's press conference, that's what they've harped on. That one little mistruth there, that's what they've harped on. But I don't remember any of these people saying the same thing about Obama when Obama said this.
We flood communities with so many guns that it is easier for a teenager to buy a Glock than get his hands on a computer or even a book.
Obama said with a straight face while he was president at a memorial service, it is easier to buy a Glock than get a computer or a book in some places. That is the most outrageous, absurd lie I've ever heard. I've ever heard a president say. It's stupid. You're telling me if I go to the city of Chicago now, I can get a Glock easier than a book? That's stupid. You're telling me the city of Chicago doesn't have libraries that you can go in and get a book for free? You're telling me that more kids have guns than smartphones? I sincerely doubt that. It might be a little too easy to buy a gun in Chicago. It's not. It's actually very hard. They usually have to go out of the state. But he's talking about illegally. But it was, and I don't remember Jake Tapper, Chuck Todd, Scott Pelley going in and saying, more lies and mistruths and bluster from President Obama. How can the Republic survive? And this is not, he is such a liar. No, I don't remember hearing that. But we hear this every day from Trump. This is what I'm talking about. It's not even so much the whole fake news thing. It's not even so much that Trump is not being a liar sometimes. It's that you did not do the same thing with Obama. You do not do the same thing when it's a Democrat president, when it's a Democrat congressman, when it's liberal issues. You don't have the same scrutiny. So people don't take you seriously now, and they don't believe you because they just know you're biased. And they really don't believe you because then you lie about not being biased. Just admit your bias. Just admit it. That would solve a lot of the problems. If Chuck Todd could just go up and say, you know what, I'm just a liberal Democrat, I have a different point of view, it might solve a lot of this whole fake news problem. But no, it's not. You're just making it worse. 407-916-5400, text to 23680, text to 23680. I want to get your comments on this as well. We have a lot more to get to, a lot more on this issue to get to. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We will be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Yes, welcome back. This is the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. This is your Orlando Smart Talk Radio, Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, joined by Tom Benson producing. You can text to 23680. One person said, great points, Yaffee, on the text line. You can watch us on Facebook Live. Just send me a friend request or go to Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page or the WFLA Facebook page. Like us there. Someone there said, I am spot on. Tell it. I appreciate that. Sorry, I'm just trying to look through Chuck Todd's Twitter, because he tweeted a bunch of things during Trump's press conference and some things after that I just found amazing. That shows that he's biased. Just admit it. Just admit your bias. Just admit you're a liberal Democrat, then I'll take you more seriously. Why can't we do that? At least the commentators on Fox News and at least people on talk radio admit it.
Well, the other thing, too, is the commentators and the people like they're big stars in the evening. They're not journalists. They're there to give an opinion and to shape a show in a certain degree. But when journalists, so-called journalists, they give an opinion, whether they realize it or not, based on their biases.
I know, and they do it all the time. Look at this. Look at this from Chuck Todd here. He retweeted this out yesterday on his daily Meet the Press thing. Chuck Todd to Trump. Make it clear that not only are you not anti-Semitic, but that you reject people who are, even if they voted for you. What? What kind of question is that? Make it clear that you're not anti-Semitic? What? What about, I don't remember these questions of Obama when Jeremiah Wright came out and all his crazy things. The most anti-Semitic person on the planet is people like Louis Farrakhan and Jeremiah Wright, who supported Obama. Did they go, Obama, make it clear that you're not anti-Semitic? See the double standard? This is why people on our side are so upset. This is why. Let's see. He said, that's another thing he said during the press conference. He said, press bashing may feel good to folks, but when it's done by people in power, it's corrosive. Take off your partisan hats for a second. What? So when the media is constantly bashing you, and you fight back, well, then it's corrosive and you shouldn't criticize the media. Presidents have been doing this forever, by the way. This isn't new to Trump. Obama criticized Fox News. I just played a whole montage of that. Nixon used to criticize the media all the time. What was it, Clinton? They came up with the the vast right-wing conspiracy. That was all criticizing of the media.
Well, I saw an article today. I didn't read the details, but I will. Thomas Jefferson hated the media, the press back in his day. So it's been going on for hundreds of years.
Of course it has. And then, okay, this is another thing Chuck Todd tweeted out during the press conference. Just admit you're a liberal Democrat, Chuck Todd, who has a bias against Trump, and then we can move on with our lives. Who on the White House staff has the guts to tell him this may not be the presser that will calm the waters on Capitol Hill with the nervous GOPers? Who has the guts to tell Chuck Todd that he's a liberal Democrat? I do. Here we go. This is among the most circularly odd explanations on Russia right now that he has come up with yet. From what I heard from the press conference, he basically said that the Russia allegations are not true. Now, if you don't believe that, that's one thing, but he answered the question. And not only that, but he made a great point that if he was harder on Russia, then you would all complain about him being too hard on Russia. He actually made that point. But Chuck Todd won't bring that up. See what I'm saying here? But the biggest problem that people on my side have with that, and why they harp on the fake news thing, why they harp on the media, and why this is so popular, and why Trump gets out there and he bashes the media and people love it, is because they know the double standard. They know the double standard. And just admit your bias. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. Michelle Malkin was on Fox News yesterday, and she had some interesting comments on this, and I want to play that. Plus, someone at the press conference who was actually bashed by Trump at the press conference defends Trump, which is kind of goes against what Chuck Todd was saying, but there you go. 407-916-5400. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We will be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Yes, this is Orlando Smart Talk Radio, where we talk faith, culture, and politics. If you missed any of the show, you can check out the podcast of the show anywhere podcasts are available. Just search pretty much Beyond Reason Radio anywhere podcasts are available, and you will find it. You can also find it on the 1025WFLA.com website. Click on the Good Morning Orlando tab, then click on Beyond Reason blog. You can find my writings plus the podcast of the show there, and it's on iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere podcasts are available, like I said. So I started the show today talking about how it's just, y'all make me come on here and defend Trump. And I don't necessarily want to all the time. I'm not the biggest fan of Trump. There are definitely some things that worries me. I mean, I hear a lot of people on the right talk about how Trump's accomplished more than any other president at this time. And I look at him like, not really. He's done some executive orders. Most of them have very little impact. Some of them are really good, I like. But, I mean, he's really got to start working with Congress and get some actual legislation done and get some things passed. Tax reform, repealing Obamacare. There's a lot of stuff he really needs to get done, and he's going to have to work with Congress to do it. And I'm seeing very little evidence that that's happening. Now, hopefully that will change. He says it's going to change in the next couple weeks. But, I often talk about how the right needs to calm down as well and not just totally idolize Trump like he's God or something, because he's not. So I criticize Trump just as much as the next guy, but I have to come on here and defend him a lot because the left and a lot of people in the quote-unquote mainstream media are going nuts, are going crazy, are going berserk, and it's beyond reason. And I talked about, if you miss any of the first hour of the show, basically my point was it's not even so much that people think CNN is fake news or something. It's getting that point for a lot of people, but it's the double standard, really, that people are upset with. It's the double standard that all these people, and I played cuts earlier, say these crazy things about Trump, and Trump deserves it sometimes. I'm not saying Trump doesn't deserve it, but the fact is they didn't say the same things about Obama. And that's what people get upset about. Obama said some pretty radical, crazy lies during his presidency, yet I didn't hear all these so-called non-biased journalists say these criticisms. And so my advice to them is just admit your bias. Just come out and admit it. This is where we are now, so just admit it. Chuck Todd, Wolf Blitzer, just come out and admit your liberal Democrats. Just admit your bias towards them and your bias against Trump, and then we can move on with our lives. I don't think they're actually going to do that, but I'm just saying. Now, I got a text coming in by someone who says, I'm a UCF journalism student, and what the media is doing is against all journalism ethics that have been taught to me. Yeah, and and I talked about before, I don't necessarily want to be one of these hosts that talks about the media, because Rush Limbaugh, for instance, he made talk radio big. He's made a career. You listen to the show, it's basically every show every show is him blasting the media. He's made a career off that. That's where a lot of this comes from, because the media had a monopoly. There was just 3 outlets, the news basically all leaned to the left, and then someone like Rush Limbaugh comes along, calls them out, and points out their bias, says he is a conservative. People see that he's right, and then we have the divide eventually where we are today. So that's where a lot of it comes from. But it's getting to the point where nobody on either side really trusts them. And plus, people in my generation are not watching cable news all day. They're going online and reading articles and watching clips and watching videos. So just blasting the media isn't exactly appealing to my generation. So that's not why I talk about it all the time. But I wanted to take this show to really dig into it, to really address the issue, really address the divide, and then we can move on with our lives. And I think someone who really addressed this probably better than anyone else I've heard this week is Michelle Malkin. Now, she's a writer for Conservative Review, for HotAir.com. She's written books. She was on Fox and Friends this week. And by the way, we have Fox and Friends on in the morning show when I'm here in the morning show. And they always have these columnists, and they have a lot of talk radio people on. But all of them are hot girls. It's really not fair. like they have Laura Ingraham. They have 2 talk radio hosts on a lot. You know who they are? Laura Ingraham and Dana Lash.
And you have to look at Bud Hedinger. Huh?
That's not what I was getting at. But what I'm saying is, I just look at that, and for one, I think, what are women marching about? Because the women have all the power. Just look at that. But the other thing is, I'm never going to have that much opportunity on Fox News because I'm not a hot girl. I'm never going to be able to get as much attention because I'm not a hot girl. I have to be a male in today's society. So it's just a side point. It's just really not fair. Not that I'm complaining because, I'm like any other guy. I don't mind looking at a hot girl. But Michelle Malkin was on, and she this is what she said about why people are so upset at the mainstream media.
It was a full employment act for me over the last 8 years. Not only did Culture of Corruption come out within the first 7 months of the administration, but of course I could have written an entire encyclopedia series with all the columns that I did reporting on all of those scandals. And the whitewash that continues with these people pretending as if the Obama administration, even if in its first 100 days, wasn't a complete hot mess. I did a column this week comparing the first 100 days of the Obama administration with Trump. The idea that it is unprecedented chaos, what's happening now. Where were these people in the first 100 days of Obama when there were 4 withdrawals of Obama nominees based on everything from tax problems to national security problems? Obama had nominated a national intelligence head who was a Saudi-funded shill. Where were they?
I think see, this goes back to the point I've been making this whole show. It's not necessarily that they're fake news. It's that their bias and the double standard's obvious. And what she was talking about in her column, I went back and read that column. Obama's pick for National Intelligence Council chairman, Charles Freeman, he had tapped the former U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia for the sensitive post despite abundant conflicts of interests. Freeman had served for 4 years on the board of the China National Offshore Oil Corporation, a company owned by the Chinese Communist government. The state-owned firm has invested in Sudan and Iran. Freeman also led the Middle East Policy Council, a Washington, D.C.-based group funded by the Saudi government. Obama knew all that and looked the other way. There were so many problems at the beginning of the Obama administration as well, and talked about people who had to be pulled because of that. At the time, Obama tapped Richardson, New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, to lead the Commerce Department And he was the subject of a high-profile probe and ongoing grand jury investigation into whether he traded New Mexico government contracts for campaign contributions. So this was happening during Obama, and I don't remember, like Michelle Malkin says, I don't remember the so-called non-biased objective journalists not calling that. I don't remember them calling all that out, saying it was a mess, saying this is crazy, saying he's a maniac. No. The double standard is what people are upset about. And if, don't take my word for it, by the way. There's 3 books that I've read in the past year or so that really bring this to light. And it's by 3 people who are not necessarily big conservatives. One I read from Juan Williams. He talked about how he was basically run out of NPR for saying something that was not politically correct. Juan Williams is a liberal Democrat. And he talked about how NPR should not be government funded and how NPR is wholly biased for liberals and how he has a much better experience on Fox News. That's a liberal Democrat. So then there's another book I read, John Stossel. He had a book on that. He talks about how he was run out of ABC News because he was libertarian. And he couldn't get any of his stories done because it was a libertarian take. And he eventually saw the writing on the wall and had to go to Fox News. And he says, Fox News is great. They let me actually do stories that I want to do, and they don't tell me what to say. Okay? And then there's Cheryl Atkinson. She's not a Republican. She's probably a Democrat. She's bashed both sides. She was run out of CBS News because she started looking into Benghazi and she started looking into Fast and Furious. And she said the CBS execs wouldn't let her do it. And they kept getting in her way. And it's like, that's 3 big examples of people that are not conservative Republicans, that don't just have it out for against the media, who worked for these industries, who were run out of them because of the double standard and the obvious bias. So don't take my word for it as an outsider. Read their books, read their words. They talk about it in great detail, how it's there. So it's not like we're making, and all you have to do is look at polls from people in the media. Most of them are liberal Democrats. They live in New York, Los Angeles, D.C., liberal Democrat areas. So it's not like it's not like we're just screaming in the wind here. There is actually evidence that they're biased. I just wish they would just admit it. Admit it. Most people on Fox News, most people on talk radio, they admit it. Just admit it. That's the biggest problem. That is why we can't move past this. That's why we can't move. Now, someone who made a great point on this, believe it or not, and he's probably a liberal Democrat too, I'm sure, was John Dickerson. His first name is John, right? John Dickerson from CBS News. He was on with Hugh Hewitt this week. I think it was actually today or yesterday. And he talked about the problem in the media. Now, he's not a fan of Trump. He called out Trump as well. But he talked about Hugh Hewitt, why the mainstream media has a lot of credibility problems. And he says it's not Trump's fault. This is what he said.
I mean, yes, it's true, and it's not because of anything obviously Donald Trump did. The press did all that good work ruining its reputation on its own, and we can have a long conversation about what created that. Part of it, though, is what you mentioned about the local weather report, which is to say a lot of hysterical coverage about every little last thing that doesn't warrant it. Having said that, it doesn't mean, and in fact it most explicitly does not mean that the press just throws out the standards.
Agree.
And one of the roles of the press is to make sure that the president, in the voice of the people, is telling the truth.
The problem with that, and I agree, one of the biggest problems with the media right now is the hysterical coverage of everything. There's a normal snowstorm up north, and you think it's the end of the world. You think oh my gosh, I have to hunker down. We love those words, hunker down, or we're going to die.
Buy every loaf of bread and gallon of milk
exactly.
available. Yeah.
So the hysterical coverage of everything Trump does, like he's some kind of Hitlerian crazy maniac, ruins their credibility. And I've been talking about that on this show for the past 2 months. I think maybe he listens to this show. I think John Dickerson, he must listen to this show because he's making the point that exactly that I've been making for a while. But the one thing that bothers me is he talks about, well, the media has to keep the president accountable. And this goes back to what I've been saying this whole show. You did not do that with Obama. That is the issue. That is why conservatives, why Republicans, why Trump supporters don't like you. because of the double standard. So when Trump calls you out and calls you fake news, of course they're going to applaud. And even if Trump's lying, they don't care because you have lost your credibility. The polls show that Trump's disapproval is, some of them have it in 40, some of them have it in 50. It's kind of all over the place. His approval has gone up in many polls, in Reuters and Rasmussen. But their trust in the media in all the polls is a lot lower than Trump's. So that's what I'm talking about. So in the next segment, I want to address this whole Trump anti-Semitism thing. Remember, I talked about this on a show a couple weeks ago, how one leftist says Trump's an anti-Semite, and then another leftist says that Trump is a puppet of Israel. So it talks about the hypocrisy there, but there was an interesting exchange between Trump and a Jewish reporter, and then the Jewish reporter actually defends Trump. So it's a very interesting exchange. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We will be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. If you missed any of the show, make sure to check out the podcast. What you really should do is just friend me on Facebook. Send me a friend request. I don't have enough friends. I just don't have enough friends. I need more friends. So send me a friend request. Michael Yaffee, me the host, and we'll be friends. I'm posting stuff all the time. By the way, I posted some of my conversation yesterday. I had a caller yesterday tell me I shouldn't do this job because I'm a Christian. And it's not the Christian thing to do. So I asked the question on Facebook, got a lot of different responses. So if you send me a friend request on Facebook, you can see the post, and then you can respond as well, and we can have a great old discussion, because I actually think it's a very interesting discussion, and I might address that at the end of the show here. But I want to get to something that I found fascinating. Donald Trump had an interesting exchange with a Jewish reporter who works for the Jewish publication Amy Magazine. His name is Jake Turks. And, he got a lot of criticism for treating Jake Turks this way. This is a little bit of the exchange that happened. Here it is.
There's been a report out that 48 bomb threats have been made against Jewish senators all across the country in the last couple of weeks. There are people who are committing anti-Semitic acts or threatening to.
He said he was going to ask a very simple, easy question. And it's not. It's not a simple question, not a fair question. Okay, sit down. I understand the rest of your question. Racism. The least racist person. In fact, we did very well relative to other people running as a Republican. Quiet.
So that's kind of funny. So a lot of people said this is more evidence that Trump is anti-Semitic. Now, let's see if I can find it again. I had that tweet from Chuck Todd, who after that said, let's see. Here's Chuck Todd to Trump is what he tweeted out. Apparently said it on one of his shows. Make it clear that not only are you not anti-Semitic, but you reject people who are, even if they voted for you. So Chuck Todd saying, you should say you're not anti-Semitic. I mean, that's stupid. It's just the dumbest. It's the dumbest thing a reporter could say. Just go to a random. Tom Benson, you should prove to me now that you're not racist.
And Trump has Jewish members in his home family. His son-in-law and his daughter converted.
Well, yeah, exactly. But what's even more amazing is all this started because of that whole exchange with that reporter. Well, that reporter was on Fox News later with Ed Henry, and he defends Trump. Jake Turks, this is what he said about Donald Trump.
I've worked with the president, with his people throughout the campaign, throughout the transition, and so many times I've seen some of our colleagues in the media describe certain events as, in the way it relates to the Jewish community in a certain light that no one in our community saw it that way, and there were certain acts that were described as anti-Semitic, or certain people described as anti-Semitic, and the people in our community who know these people personally said, that's not true. Why are people who aren't Jewish deciding what is considered anti-Semitism? The president's relationship with the Jewish community, I've only seen it firsthand for the last 2 years, but he's done an unprecedented amount of outreach with the Orthodox Jewish community, and so we understand why this is so hurtful for him, to see himself being called an anti-Semite when his entire. No, not just I don't believe it. I've seen him firsthand. Yeah. I mean, there's
My point is, you feel it's unfair.
It is very unfair what's been done to him, and I understand why he's so defensive. And I'm with him when it comes to being outraged about him being charged with this anti-Semitism.
So you have the person, the reporter that was called out, and a lot of people use that to show Trump's anti-Semitic, and he comes out, talks on Fox News, and defends Trump and talks about how Trump is one of the best friends to the Orthodox Jewish community and gives examples of how he does it, and then actually defends Trump and says, I understand why he's outraged. So Chuck Todd, liberal Democrat, if you would just admit that, we can move on with our lives. Liberal Democrat Chuck Todd, will you play that on your show? Is that enough proof that he's not anti-Semitic and doesn't care about anti-Semitic support and all that stuff? I sincerely doubt it. So we addressed a lot on the show. If you missed any of the show, make sure to check the podcast anywhere podcasts are available, because I addressed this whole thing about the media today and why there's hatred of the media on the right. So before I end the show, though, and just lost it. Before I end the show here, I'm going to read real quick something from Isaiah, because I keep hearing that. I heard that caller yesterday that as a Christian, I should not do this job because I should do something more uplifting. Interesting. When you read a lot of the Bible, it wasn't as uplifting. Like this, what Isaiah said, listen, O heavens, and hear, O earth, for the Lord speaks. Sons I have reared up and brought up, but they have revolted against me. And he goes on over and over about Israel was full of evildoers. The society was corrupt. I guess Isaiah shouldn't have done that. Wasn't uplifting enough. He shouldn't have called out the evil in his society. I guess I shouldn't do that either. I guess that's not what God wants me to do, huh? This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. Make sure you all have a wonderful weekend. Pray for me as I pray for you, and pray for this country. And, well, I'll catch you guys next week.
Well,